All right, you all. Thank you again today for joining us with the International Association of Woodcarvers. It is February the 20th at 3:03 p.m. And we thank you for taking time out of your day to come in and meet with us today to talk about wood carving. Today on the meeting, we have a special guest with us from Winnipeg, Canada. We got Lucas Kost from Lucas Kost Carvings that's going to be on talking to us about cottonwood bark carvings and carving wood spirits. Before we get started with Lucas, I want to go through a few things. As we mentioned a few minutes ago before the meeting started, the Buy Me a Coffee link is continuing to be available for anybody who wants to donate to these meetings. That assists us to be able to pay for the Zoom app that we use. Also assists us with giveaways and things like that for the meetings. So if you'd like to click on that, again, it's in the chat box there. It's on our International Association of Woodcarvers Instagram page, Facebook page, and I think we even link it on our YouTube page. So check that out if you get a chance. If you if you watch our videos on YouTube, make sure you're taking time to like and subscribe our channel there. In the event that you miss any of these meetings, it'll give you an alert as far as meetings that you've missed or ones you want to go back and watch. I want to let you know a little bit about class schedules that's coming up. Mr. Dave Stetson's having a new class that he's going to be signing up people for on a sitting caricature. I think that class is going to start in late April. You can find out the information on Wood Carving Academy as far as the information on that class. A few other people that have classes available that's coming up. Kevin Applegate has one. Janet Cordell is going to be doing a female bus class. Ryan Olson has a class that's closed at this point. It's on the hot tub with the two females and the male. Hopefully Ryan will be doing some other classes coming up in the future. Dwayne Gosnell has a power class. Dale Green's got a boomer class, the guy sitting on a gas tank. And Mr. Bob Hershey's going to be doing a surfing frog. So there's several opportunities out there for people to get involved, take classes and learn during this time when people weren't meeting in person. Make sure you take advantage of those classes. I've been in several of those. It's a good opportunity to get good instruction. You can see everything that goes on with the instructor, and then they also record those so you can go back and watch the videos. So take advantage of that if you get a chance. Today on our meeting, we got Lucas Kost that's going to be coming on talking to us. He has a couple of different ways you can find him. You can find him at www.lucaskost.com and on Instagram at Lucas Kost Carvings. He also has a few videos out on YouTube. He's going to be talking a little bit about cottonwood bark carvings today, and he offers classes on his website there that he'll be talking about a little bit later. So at this time, I'll go ahead and turn this over to Lucas. Lucas, we appreciate you taking time out and joining us today.
All right, I think I'm unmuted here. Here we go. Thanks for that awesome introduction, Blake. You are really starting to nail those things down. That's fantastic. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. And, you know, I've been tuning in on Saturdays and it's cool to be on the flip side of it now. So, yeah, I'm Lucas Kost. I'm going to be talking about some of the cottonwood bark carvings that I do and a little bit about my process. And I'll be doing a live demo. Hopefully I'll be able to do a whole wood spirit in approximately an hour. We'll see. That's pretty ambitious, so it should be entertaining no matter how that goes. So and I want to pretty much dive into the demo as soon as we can, and I highly encourage anybody at any point to unmute themselves and ask any questions about anything that pops into your mind, hopefully carving related. And that'll keep me from wandering into uncharted territory, just trying to talk to myself and keep y'all entertained. So yeah, maybe I'll start a little bit about, you know, my history in wood carving and how I got started. I got a lesson from a family friend named Marcel Desolets here in Winnipeg. He's an absolute masterful carver. And yeah, I think I was 11 years old or so. And that really got me started. I fell in love with like every process of cotton bark carving. Here in Winnipeg, I have the luxury of living right on the Red River that runs through the middle of the city, and cottonwood bark trees grow along the riverbank. And whenever they reach the end of their long and storied lives, they'll tumble into the river, and then the bark washes off and lands sometimes right in my backyard as driftwood. So I know that bark is a pretty scarce and precious resource for a lot of people. So I'm very spoiled in that way that I get to go out and do my own bark picking, and that's a fun process on in and of itself. So I love that aspect of it. You know, the feel of a sharp knife going through the wood. It's hard to beat. So yeah, I was the kind of kid that, like, when I got interested in something growing up, I would be like really laser focused on that one thing for like, you know, months and months at a time, and then I'd often drop that thing and go on to something else. So cottonwood bark carving was definitely one of those things that I went through many different phases of throughout my childhood, learning a little bit more as I got older. And just recently, since the start of this ridiculous pandemic that we're all living through right now, which is crazy still to me, and I've found that it's the perfect COVID hobby. So I've really done a full dive back into carving since the start of COVID, as I'm sure that's probably relatable for many of you. So yeah, I've been trying to expand my skill set and just, you know, spend as much time carving as I possibly can. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, I think before we get too rambly, you all came to see a live demonstration, I believe. So I'm going to do my little camera flip here and get started. I'll show you guys my setup. We should probably do a little note on safety. We'll talk about tools and all that fun stuff. Okay, bear with me for a minute. Blake, how does this look to you? Tell me how the resolution looks, if it seems like we've got a good setup.
I think you're going to be good there, Lucas.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay. So it looks to me like it's focused, I think. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I've got not the big crazy set of tools that you see a lot of carvers have. I've got you know, a set of, what do we have here, about 13 or so knives and palm chisels, and a lot of carvers will carve with a mount or a carving vise or something like that, and I do that as well. But today, mostly for the ease of the demonstration, I'm going to be holding the piece in my hand, and that's when the palm chisels come in quite handy. It's tough to use these big fancy guys. Just you know, you could hold the shaft of the tool kind of like this and do some carving, but that's just, you got this big bulky handle. We don't want that. So yeah, the palm chisels, when I'm holding the piece in my hand like this, it's very handy. Yeah, so I think before we get started with the demonstration here, I'll do a little safety demonstration, because that's really important when you're holding the piece of wood in your hand. And basically, I kind of call this tip the rule of thumb, and you'll see why in a second. I will be using my right hand as my dominant hand to get, you know, it's kind of the source of power. I get to really dig in with that hand. And then my non-dominant hand here, my left hand, I will be holding the piece, but also have my thumb available to be guiding the piece as I cut through. And the reason I call it the rule of thumb is that my left thumb here never leaves my other, it's either touching my other thumb here or on the shaft of the tool. So, and as long as I'm always making contact between this hand, kind of anchoring it to this thumb, then I do not have the opportunity to even make an errant cut where I might be, you know, slicing off a piece of the carving that I don't want to take off, or cutting my hand or something like that. And that's what we want to avoid, because it's no fun for anybody, for you, for the medical team that will be trying to stitch your thumb back on. So yeah, we want to avoid that. So, okay, now safety tip behind us. I'll talk a little bit about how I get started. So today we're going to be focusing on kind of the wood spirit motif, which is a very common style of carving, especially in cottonwood bark. I'm sure you've seen many different ways ways that different carvers approach it. And there's so many different really beautiful ways that people do this. But of course, all I can show you is what I know. So I'll be showing you the way that I approach it. And the first step for this is kind of my basic framework for carving faces of any kind in cottonwood bark, is I'll start with creating a 90-degree angle. It's like if you've ever had experience carving faces in like a raw chunk of basswood, you know, you'll usually start on that 90-degree angle on the piece. And oh, I see a question from Larry. Do I power wash the bark? I do not power wash the bark. Bark can often be very flaky or brittle on the end, so I might be concerned if I were to power wash it that I would possibly damage the piece of wood. But I also know that there can be a lot of granular deposits in the outer material, so I would understand the impulse to want to wash the bark off beforehand. But that's just not something I've ever done, and it can be not the most healthy thing for your tools. But I do have the strop handy all the time to keep my tools sharp as I'm carving. So I tend not to worry about that too terribly much. So where were we here? Yes, creating this 90-degree angle. Again, noticing that my left thumb here is kind of guiding the power hand, my right hand, and creating somewhat of a 90-degree angle. It doesn't have to be perfect. Very often you'll have flaky pieces like that. It's always good to identify these sorts of flaky areas and just sort of remove them in advance, so you don't carve a nice, beautiful, detailed nose and then have to either glue it back on or lose it. Sometimes sometimes it happens where a piece will, you know, fall on the ground, and I've got, you know, 8 billion shavings of cottonwood bark on the ground and looking for the tip of the nose and I can't find it, and it's like, what the heck. So yeah, removing that material to create somewhat of a 90-degree angle where we're going to have our face. And then once we've got that angle approximated, we can go ahead and do what might be another familiar set of cuts for people who have done faces before in a raw hunk of basswood. I keep wanting to say basswood. That's not even a thing. That's not a word. So sometimes you can go in and mark these stop cuts that you're going to do. You're going to do 2 stop cuts. I'll draw a line here indicating the top of the brow ridge, somewhere in there, and maybe we're going to have our nose. We might have some problems with this piece. I have another piece on standby if this one ends up having some cracks that are unmanageable given our time constraint here. So the top of the brow ridge and then the bottom of the nose, and we're going to do 2 stop cuts. First one down and in like that, and then this cut coming up the under part of the underside of the stop cut is an important cut, because what you're doing here is getting the depth and dimensionality in the sort of the bridge of the nose. I'd say it's a general principle of good carvings. I don't know, carvings that I tend to like anyways, that they all have one thing in common at least, and that is the appearance of depth and dimensionality. So we want to be trying to stay away from making flat looking facial features. And so good deep cut in there. And we'll do the bottom part of the nose as well. Another stop cut. Okay. And now, after we've done these 2 stop cuts, the next cut we're going to do is one that not everybody does, and one that I really like to do. It's kind of angling back the flares of the nostrils. So we're going to do an angular stop cut down in here like this. And you can draw these lines beforehand if you want to try to make sure that you're getting a symmetrical carving. In there like that. Okay. And if you were to look at, I don't know, maybe I can, this might look funny, but I'm going to try to flip us around here. If you were to, look at my nose, you might notice that, you know, the ball of the nose kind of comes down and extends beyond where the flares of the nostril are right here and here. So that's this cut that we're doing right here, is kind of these angular pieces of the nose. Oops, we don't want that height. All right. So after we've done these stop cuts, I'm going to take this flat gouge. I don't know what this might be, somewhere in and around a number 3 or a 4 or something like that, and just round the areas on the underneath the nose. Consistency of this piece is actually a little bit harder than a lot of cottonwood bark, so that's a fun little thing for doing a live demo. Okay, here we go. All right, next up we are going to define where, oh yeah, we got some fun stuff in there. Well, let's just kind of see what happens. When you are used to carving in cottonwood bark, you learn to just kind of ignore the cracks. Sometimes let them be whatever they are. Another tip, if you see a crack and if you have the luxury of time, you can use some kind of Gorilla Glue to just sort of soak in the area there before anything starts to get too crazy and wants to flake off on you. So that will stabilize the piece a little bit. But because we do not have the luxury of time today, that's not what I'm going to do. So what I've started to do here is just draw a center line where the bridge of the nose is going to be. And then I'll sometimes just draw a line on either side. And that will indicate the edges of the bridge of the nose. And then with this number 9 U-shaped gouge, I don't know what the millimeter is on this. It might be, I don't know, a 10 or something like that. Who knows? Not me. So we're just gonna go make these cuts. Remove the material on the side of the bridge of the nose, just going right along that line. And we'll do one cut down like that, getting some good depth. And then I'll try not to, I'm not going to worry about removing this material in here. I'm just going to come and sweep around like that and carve somewhat of an eye socket. And then flatten out the area with a gouge like so. Make some room for an eye in there eventually. And we'll do the same thing on this side. Going down, getting the bridge of that nose, and then a cut sideways across for the eye socket. Once again, I highly encourage anybody to ask any questions that they have whatsoever. It does not have to be in relation to what I happen to be carving right now. It can be anything to do with carving. It's whatever you want. It's a free for all.
Lucas, I have a question. Right there where you have your pencil.
Yes.
Did you bring sweeping cut from the tip of the nose up to where the eyes are going to be?
I think you're muted, Lucas.
Oh, unmute. Okay, thank you, Blake. There we go. So I'm gonna have to get you to ask that question one more time because I didn't quite get it.
Yes. Did you make a sweeping cut right there from the tip of the nose up to where the eyes are going to be? Because I tend to make a hook nose, like a Roman nose, and I'm always trying to get away from that, but I have trouble with that.
Oh, I got you. So yeah, so to avoid the sort of hook nose kind of feature, that has to do with, I would say, the second stop cut that we did earlier to define where the tip of the nose is going to be. And this is something that I didn't really mention, but rather than doing the stop cut downwards with the knife so that the knife is, you know, perfectly perpendicular,
Mhm.
to the nose there, I will actually angle it backwards like that. And I did the same thing with the forehead. You can see that these stop cuts, they're not really, I guess, true stop cuts where it's a perpendicular cut downwards. It's got a bit of an angle down like that, and then like that. And the same is true for the brow ridge cut. So that's great. That was a really good question. I appreciate that, because
Thank you.
I'll probably be doing, all kinds of cuts in this demo where it's things that I have an intuition for how to do from having done them so many times, but might not get to explain them fully. So I encourage all kinds of questions like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas.
No problem.
I have a more generic bark question for you, Lucas.
Go for it.
We live in the same city, and
Okay, great.
we're probably gathering our bark, and we're accessing pretty well the same kind of bark.
Yeah.
Find, and I do mostly gnome homes. I don't do a lot of faces.
Okay, yeah, cool.
And so I'm using the sides of the bark a lot, and I find the sides on my bark is like rock compared to the center. So if I'm in the front where you're carving now, that's fine. But as soon as I go to the sides and start doing, are you finding that with yours too, or?
Yeah, the thing is, here's what I find with getting the bark where we get it, because it's driftwood, right? So it spends some time floating around in the Red River, and I find that, well, I mean, this is kind of an assumption I'm making, but I'm guessing that the longer that the piece spends in the river as driftwood, the softer the piece becomes, and also the flakier it becomes, which is not always ideal. But I find that there's a lot of variation from piece to piece in terms of the hardness.
Oh.
And I definitely agree that for any given piece, it's usually harder in and around the sides. And when you get into well, you can't really call it the heartwood because it's still the bark. But when you get deeper into the piece, it definitely gets a little bit softer. So yeah, that's for these faces, we're getting a lot of depth and dimensionality, and we're getting into the heart of the piece. And it is a little bit softer in there for sure.
Okay. And the only other question or / comment I was going to make is something I've just started doing in the last summer is using a Dremel with a sanding drum on it to start my shaping of the bark.
Yeah, cool.
And it cleans it off really fast. Messy.
I would imagine.
Wear a dust mask and do it outside.
Yes, that would be great advice. I have precisely zero experience doing any power tool carving, but I would imagine it would be a good solution for clearing the surface of cottonwood bark, because it can be pretty rough. It can be pretty rough on the tools, and you have to sharpen very frequently. So
I've probably done 100 pieces, and over the years, and I've only discovered that last summer. And I just bought myself a Fordham. I haven't even used it yet. I bought a Fordham and just to play with, right? So
amazing.
But my Dremel has always been my go-to. But I don't power carve. I don't see myself as a power carver.
Right. It's just
I'm a hand tool
natural material for sure. Cool.
Okay, I'm gonna unmute, or I'm gonna mute again.
Oh no, I heard you there. I think. Oh, you're going to mute. I thought you said you were in a mute. Gotcha.
Thanks for that.
Yes, thank you for your question. It's awesome. Okay, so I have decided while we were having those conversations that this fella is going to be wearing a hat. If you've seen my stuff before, very often you'll notice that he's got a bit of a hood or some sort of a wizard hat type thing going on. So I've just done, I've done a stop cut, as you could see, all the way along, and then just sort of went and cleaned up that stop cut with the V-tool. Like that. And so now we have the rough out of the nose. He's coming forward. He's a bit of a compromised piece in here, so we'll see how that pans out for us. Yeah, so now I think we're pretty much at the point where we can start to rough out the mustache. I saw a question come up in the chat. Maybe I'll let Blake read those off to me so that he can be involved too, because that's fun. The more the merrier.
And it says, any special considerations for where you decide to place the face on the bark?
That is a great question. Great question. It's a pretty It's a pretty whimsical process. I really just kind of visualize it. I can't tell you that I have any specific rules for how I go about placing the face, because it depends on what you want to do. If you want to do a more realistic looking face, then I would recommend, studying facial proportions. You've got the old like 3 or 4 eye rule for where you want your eyes to be placed, and then the sort of circle and a half technique for finding where the nose is going to be and all these things. But I don't use that, as you have already been able to see. I like to just sort of blow those rules wide open when I'm doing these fun little cottonwood bark wood spirits. And that will allow you to get all kinds of different looking, funny kind of characters. I often like carvings that almost make me laugh. It's like, who would have thought to put the nose way the heck down here or something like that? Like, that's funny. And I think that that's awesome a lot of the time. So I suggest that you trust whatever your gut intuition is telling you for where to put things. But yeah, I mean, if we wanted to be, neutral and not do anything crazy, I tend to put the nose kind of in, I don't know. I could just make up a rule right now. If you were to cut the piece in half, you could probably say that's where the bottom of the nose approximately would be. Maybe that could be a rule if you wanted something like that. So yeah. Thank you for the question. Okay. All right. Now I don't have any time telling device in front of me, so I have no idea how we're doing here, but feels slow to me. I want it to be ahead of this point by now.
You're good, Lucas. We're just 30 minutes in, so you're good.
Okay, well, I think that I guess 30 minutes from the start of the carving, I was advertising this, like, see if I could do a carving in an hour. So we did have our little. Okay, so these lines, sometimes I might just totally forget to talk about what I'm doing, which wouldn't be good. These lines here that I've drawn and then carved are going to be the edges of the mustache, and maybe so that we can have a visual, I'll draw the rest of the mustache while I'm carving. I don't always go and draw the whole thing, but we will do that today. So maybe this guy's going to have a mustache that's parted in the middle like this and drawn in this sort of a shape. I don't know. This is another part that you can kind of have some fun with, right? Like sometimes you'll have a frizzy kind of looking mustache that's going down and it's got some more squiggly kinds of lines. You can have fun with it in that way. You can do somewhat of a flat line that's going just straight across this way. You can do whatever the heck you want to do with the mustache, but for the sake of keeping things rather neutral, I'll do a more of a traditional shape of a mustache coming down like that.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question there?
Absolutely, you can.
Down here in the South, our cottonwood bark is thin and not good for carving.
Yeah.
Do you know of a place that offers good quality carving cottonwood bark that you could recommend?
I wish I had a good answer to that question, but I don't. And I don't for two reasons, because as I've mentioned earlier, I have the luxury. I'm so lucky. I'm spoiled with cottonwood bark here in Winnipeg. So I've never really had to go about looking for it online or anything like that to buy it. So I don't know. I know that there's a place in British Columbia in BC that has it for sale online, and I think that they might be out of stock right now. And as for places in the States, I just couldn't tell you. I wish I had an answer. But what I will tell you here, let me go grab something for you for a second.
I have a couple of cypress knees that are about 18 to 24 inches tall.
Okay.
We have cypress trees that grows in the water here, and I plan on carving those. It's sort of our southern cottonwood bark.
Okay. Cool. Well, yeah, you got to make the best of whatever you got, I suppose. That's good.
I'll just chime in for a minute, because there's a group I follow on Facebook, and I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but there's a couple of guys south of the border in the US that sell it by the box. And even as recently as the last couple of days, I've seen some really nice boxes of bark. He demonstrates it. If you wanted to shoot me an email, I could dig up the information for you.
There we go. Beautiful. Awesome. I'm glad somebody was able to get that answered.
We can't bring it across the border. That's part of our problem. Matter of fact, yeah. I had about 6 pieces seized from me at the Mexican border one day in customs. It's a long story, but and I'm glad my wife's out of earshot because she was not happy. So,
oh man,
we're going to place some references over in the chat too of some places where you might want to check.
That's great. Yeah, and so yeah, I've definitely thought about the idea of selling the stuff myself because I'm sitting on a gold mine of cottonwood bark here in Winnipeg, but there is that issue of shipping it over the border. It might not be as much of an issue in Canada between provinces, so that will be a problem that I guess I might have to cross as I come to it if I ever try to get some bark to some people, because it is really amazing for carving. If you guys can get your hands on it, it's just so fun. The grain is really not very specific. You don't have to be fighting with the grain, but it's present enough that you still have the appearance of the grain in the wood, and it has a beautiful look to it. And yeah, it's fantastic.
You could always wrap the cottonwood bark in dope or put a body in the box. They'll never find it.
The old misdirection, exactly.
Yeah,
perfect idea. I love it. That's funny.
Just try explaining it to the Mexican border guards. That's really fun.
Hey,
yeah.
I'm here from Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth area, and I haven't done cottonwood bark yet, but I've done basswood and butternut, and I'm looking for a source for both of those and cottonwood.
Yeah. It seems like we're getting some links shared to the chat. So if you can navigate to the chat that's happening, it looks like there's some great resources that are popping up for my friends south of the border to try to get some cottonwood bark.
I will also post all of the links in the YouTube video when it goes up tonight.
Okay, great. That's awesome, Tom. Beautiful. Okay, now I've roughed in the lip while we were having our chat there. I'm hoping that the camera work and the quality is going to be good enough to serve as a helpful and valuable demonstration of how I'm getting these features done. I use this number 9 U-gouge to trace the lip first on either side of the mustache, and you'll notice that the lip is sort of, it's below the mustache is coming across and sitting over top, and that's just good for getting some depth and some 3-dimensional quality to the piece to make sure that this mustache is coming over top of the lip. And I tend to like trying to leave as much material on the mustache as we can so it looks like it's sticking out and coming forward. And I'm starting to carve with this little flex cut number 11, 3mm number 11, the details in the nose. And I will talk about this a little bit because this is a feature that I see you've missed. I mean, I don't want to come across as like I'm telling you the right way to do it. This is just how I do it, and it's what I like to see. There's this line that kind of comes forward almost towards the ball of the nose right here. It comes back and around, and there's generally quite a bit of depth in here, and we don't want the flares of the nostril to be, elevated too close to the top of the ball of the nose and get a flat looking nose. That's what we want to try to stay away from. So with this number 11, I'm digging in here and then doing a rounded semicircular shaped cut coming up in there. And I'm not digging in too deep near this top part of the cut and deeper in here. So hopefully that was clear. And then I'll just clean it up, soften the hard lines that are happening on on this side of the cut, on the cheek side of the cut. All right, and I'll just soften some more of these lines. Now we can decide if we want our guy to be having an open mouth. Maybe he's surprised. Maybe he's got some teeth or something like that. Sometimes I'll do some little teeth in here. We could draw a line. And then with a V-tool, maybe I'm being too ambitious with these extra details like teeth and things like this that don't really need to be there with my time constraint here, but we're already doing it. So here we go. So with a V-tool, I just traced a straight line from one edge of the mustache to the other, and then I'll do a line coming down like this. And then I have 3 different sizes of V-tools. I've got this guy and this one, which is a little bit bigger. I have this little micro V-tool here. So with this little tiny guy, I will come and just separate the 2 front teeth. There we go. It's looking pretty rough, but we will get to some cleaning up in a little bit.
We down here in the southern United States, like I said, we don't have that kind of cottonwood. Our cottonwood's thin, but we have an alternate source of material, a medium that we can use. I have a lot of woodpeckers around my place. And then yesterday, one of the woodpeckers pooped on my front porch. So I went and scraped it up with, I just happened to have one of these little wooden bases that I use to put my carvings on. And so, see, it's modern art. Woodpecker
Wonderful.
poop.
Woodpecker poo. What the heck? Use the resources you have available to you, people. That's just a good general piece of life wisdom. Being resourceful in any way that you can. Always important. That's awesome. All right, I'm gonna go in and round these areas that I forgot to round earlier. I'm gonna try to move a little bit quicker here because I don't want to be keeping everybody. I'll probably get a hard cut off at about an hour and a half, I'm guessing. So I'm gonna pick things up a little bit. So next we're gonna do, Do
you carve anything other than cottonwood?
Yeah, a little bit. I have some experience doing basswood, like most people do.
I just wondered if you had dedicated knives that you use for the cottonwood bark, because I know it's kind of rough on tools.
It is rough on tools. I do not have a dedicated set of tools for cottonwood bark. I have a dedicated set of sharpening supplies that I use to try to keep them sharp. And I can talk about that. I have them right here. I've got these 2 blocks of sandpaper, just sandpaper glued onto a block. This one is, what is it, 320, I believe. And this will be usually the most coarse sandpaper that I use. And if I, if another thing that I do, so I carve in cottonwood bark, first of all. Second of all, I will often be sanding my piece before I'm done carving it. So that will often leave little grains of the sandpaper in. So that could be kind of harsh on the tools. So I am a little harsh on my tools, and I know that, but I justify it by sharpening them frequently. So with this 320, I'll go and sort of reshape them a little bit if I have a nick in a tool. And then I've got a 500 or so, and then a leather strop. And then after I've done a few passes with those things, then I will use this Black & Decker Dremel tool with a felt wheel on it. And I've got some of that green sharpening compound that I rub on the felt wheel, and then just barely touching the tool, I'll go and hone it. You have to be very careful with that. Obviously, it's a power tool, and if you catch your tool, that could be an ugly situation. So it's a very, very careful process. So yeah, that's how I justify carving cottonwood bark. And using my tools aggressively.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So I can get these eye mounds going. This is with the number 11. I've drawn these eye mounds where there's going to be a large elevated mass of material. And the bottom of this circle that I've drawn is going to be the bottom of the bag of the eye, not the bottom of the eyelid or anything like that. But this is just the material that we are elevating from the cheek to be able to get a nice three-dimensional eye shape. So it kind of comes from this corner of the eye and up, and this line can kind of meet along this eyebrow ridge. Kind of come up, but not too far. All right. After that, I'll come in with a flat gouge type tool and just soften this hard line that we've created underneath, and that will get us some elevation of this eye mound. There we go. And then come in with the knife. You can probably tell that the tools I'm using to do different kinds of cuts are pretty interchangeable. You know, a lot of people have tons of tools and probably don't use them very often. I'm finding that too. It's like I'm starting to get more and more tools and finding that really excited after the first day of getting them. And then I realized, you know, I kind of had everything I really needed to begin with. You can very often do cuts like if you're using just a standard carving knife kind of shaped thing like that, you can very often do many of the same cuts with a large flat gouge. All right. Yes, moving on. Okay, what are we going to do next? Next, I think what we're going to do is rough in what will be some of the folds in this guy's hat. To do a couple folds. We don't have tons of time once again, so we won't get too carried away. We'll just do a couple lines up here. Carving in those lines with the large V tool, trying to get some good depth. And then I will go in and trace those lines with I have this X-Acto knife that I use, which is definitely not conventional. Many of you, I'm sure, will have some sort of a detailing knife. I kind of use this as a detailing knife, just an X-Acto. Go in and trace, and then soften the lines on either side to get it a nice rounded shape. All right, how are we doing now for time at this point, Blake? Where am I at? I'm gonna try to pace myself.
So it's about 15 till 4 Eastern time. So you still got a little time.
Okay.
And I know you're not there yet. We had a question in the chat about your finishing process. Do you want to talk about that after you finish the carving?
Sure. Yeah. We'll get there. And that's good motivation to get to that point if we have a question about finishing. So I won't be able to demonstrate the finishing process, but I will definitely talk about it and let you know what I do. Okay. Now I'm going to do a little bit more shaping in the nose because it's pretty crude looking still. I will take this opportunity right now to mention that I do have a pre-recorded lesson that will be available in the coming days on my website on how to carve a wood spirit, very similar to this guy. And it's going to be a lot longer and more in depth. So all of these little micro cuts that I'm like doing, but not really, don't really have the ability to talk about right now. They will be available there. So if you are curious and learning more, you can find that on my website, which is just my name, lucaskost.com. And that should be up in the next couple days, in the next week. Okay, rounding this nose a little bit. All right. So he's still looking somewhat Frankenstein-like. That's a Alec Lacasse term. crazy Frankenstein looking face. And that is just the situation that every carver goes through. I think carving faces, it's hard to get a face that's looking good right off the bat. So you have to make peace with the fact that carving is going to look pretty strange for a good 80% of the time that you're carving it.
Do you find that the cottonwood bark carvings sell better, like, you know, wood spirits like you do in cottonwood bark? Do you think they sell better than ones done out of other type of medium?
What a good question. Well, I haven't really experimented with trying to sell other pieces before. I don't know. All I can tell you is my gut intuition about that, and that would be that, you know, these pieces have such a unique shape, right? Like when you have a piece of cottonwood bark like this, you're never going to find another piece of material that's shaped like this one. So if somebody's looking to have a wood spirit hanging on the wall in their home, they might want something to be they might want something that looks unique and one of a kind, and just the cottonwood bark just naturally comes that way on its own. So it does have that going for it.
Well, and just the depths and of the
Yeah.
stoves, it just makes it have a real rustic look, you know?
Yeah, it's got this beautiful red color, and yeah, it's a pretty nice looking material. So I wouldn't be betting any money on such things or anything like that, but I would say that they're probably pretty saleable pieces compared to other kinds of wood. All right, so I've just gone and sanded. I tend not to use anything more coarse on my pieces than about a 250 grit sandpaper, and that's what I was using there. I've just done a rough job of sanding and smoothing it out, because at this point, I think we're ready to start getting into the fun stuff, which is the eyes. So my general rule of carving eyes is I'll do a dot to indicate where the corner of the eye is going to be on both sides, kind of like that, and then I will try to match it somewhat symmetrically. I mean, you know, if you want to be realistic and have a somewhat normal looking carving, then symmetry is good, but it's also fun to break those rules, right? I hope you don't feel trapped by the idea of carving this realistic, symmetrical looking face, because you can make a great carving that looks totally wacky and kind of goofy and have some fun with it. So once again, for the sake of the demo, I won't be doing anything too crazy, but I'll start by drawing where the top of the eye is going to be. And then I'll go in with a V tool and carve, instead of having the tool, once again, perpendicular, like straight up and down, I will angle it just inwards like that. So I'm removing more material on sort of the lower side of the cut. And then I'll just go in and trace that line. This is another cut where it's really important for you to have this, if you're carving the piece with like holding the piece in your hand while you're carving, that is, it's very important to be using this technique here of sort of using your non-dominant thumb as a backstop of sorts, so that you don't slip and like take a piece off of the nose. Okay, quickly on the other side. And again, now this thumb is making sure that I don't slip and jab my hand, because that's something I have done before, for sure, when I was younger, not paying as much attention to safety as I do now. So after this cut is done, I will again go in with an X-Acto knife. You can use a detailing knife of some sort if you've got one, and just trace around those lines. And then why not? I'll use this X-Acto knife again and just shave the material underneath that cut. Not worried too much about rounding it. We will round this material to carve the eyeball right away, but we're just kind of, what we're doing here is trying to get the top eyelid coming forward with respect to the bottom eyelid. So once again, creating some dimensionality. And as you can see, I am turning the piece upside down to get into this area. That's another advantage of carving with holding a piece in your hand rather than carving on a mount or something like that. So you can manipulate the piece and get into these areas that you might not have been able to get into otherwise. Okay. Oh, and another necessary tool that all carvers must have in their kit. I'm not usually fussy about tools, but this one, you guys, I got to tell you, toothbrush. Get yourselves a toothbrush. More of an eye brush in this case. I'll just go in and clean up these little fuzzy pieces.
And that's a separate toothbrush than you use in your mouth.
Well, I mean, hey, we were talking about being resourceful earlier. So for me personally, yes, this is not what I use to brush my teeth with. But hey, you got to do what you got to do. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do. All right, now I'm going to draw the bottom eye lid in here. Some kind of an almond shape type thing. There we go, like that. Once again, with the V tool. And once again, angling the tool inwards like that. So you're removing more material on the eyeball side rather than the underneath side of the cut. So you're angling it in the other direction. All right. And there we see the eyes aren't like, those aren't perfectly symmetrical, but I'm not too worried about it. I'm not too worried about symmetry. It's okay if things get a little bit imperfect. Sometimes it'll be an accidental thing that you do that you really like, and then that's sometimes how you learn new things. So now what I'm doing is digging in with this X-Acto knife. You can see I've dug in pretty deep there. It's just standing up on its own, into the corners of both of the eyes. And what we're going to do after we've done that is round off the eyeball. Although the eyeball has this nice almond shaped appearance, if you think about it, the eyeball is a ball. Indeed, it's a spherical object sitting in your skull. So that's what you want to try to create. You want to have a spherical like appearance by getting into these corners here with an X-Acto knife or a detailing tool of some sort, and just rounding the eye like that. There's so many different ways to carve eyes out there. And this is just how I approach it. And yeah, there are some different methods that I've experimented with for doing more realistic type features, but those are more time consuming. Once again, we do not have that luxury this afternoon of time. Okay, so there is the rough out of the eye. Next, we are going to draw a line that will be the upper eyelid. It just follows the sort of the line that you carved earlier for the top of the eye. And we're going to go in with the V tool again, once again, angling it down like that and carving this line, getting some depth. And just, it comes down, it doesn't quite meet the corner of the eye, it just sort of ends right above it there. And the same thing on this side. All right, now we can get our pencil out and draw what will be the bag under the eye. And because of those that cut that we did with the number 11 to make this eye mount, we've got some elevated material right here that will sort of guide you with respect to where to put these bags under the eye. So you can just sort of retrace if you want to with that. And then, excuse me, and then define the bag with the V tool like that. And you should already have a natural sort of elevation of the bag coming forward, getting some good dimensionality. All right, Then I'll add some little crow's feet in here for fun. I'll often do that. Can kind of curve this guy up like that. Make it look the same on this side too. Somewhat the same. Okay, now we can add a lower eyelid as well. This is where you can take some artistic license. You know, you can have some fun with how many lines you want to put underneath the eye. I tend to always do the one large mallard bag, but then you can put in some little micro lines here, some little details. Not a mandatory step if you are working on a time crunch. All right. Any other questions out there in Zoom land? How are we doing? How are we feeling? Comments, concerns, jokes? Anybody hear a good joke lately?
So we're right at an hour, Lucas.
Okay.
So
Cool.
maybe another 20 minutes or so.
Sounds good. Good to know. We will mosey. So get some separation here on this eyebrow ridge.
We've had some really cold weather down here in Arkansas.
Oh,
We got about a foot of snow on the ground, and
A
it
full
was
foot.
so cold yesterday morning. I sat here and watched a robin throwing earthworms on my neighbor's pickup truck muffler as he was warming his truck up to warm him up before he ate them. He was eating them like Pop-Tarts.
That is quite the visual. That's the foot of snow. Oh man, you should look up Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Just look up the temperature right now. And man, I tell you, it's actually pretty warm right now. It's blistering about -17, or I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a little bit warmer, -12 or so in Winnipeg right now. And that just seems fantastic. You know, people are walking around in their t-shirts outside. Not quite. That's an exaggeration, but it's cold up here.
And -17 is 1 degree.
There you go. Yeah, I didn't have the conversion on hand, so thanks for that. Yeah, it's cold. It's cold. It's like face hurting cold all the time in the winter. But we got cottonwood bark, so we've got that going for us.
I'd like to, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, I would like to make a comment regarding the popularity of the cottonwood bark or wood spirits as opposed to other mediums. And
Sure,
what we have found in selling wood spirits, which we do in the summertime, is people are often as enamored of the bark part as they are
right.
of the part that is carved. And
True.
as much as you take your time and try and make a beautiful piece, they buy it because they like the bark. They don't care about the
Interesting.
carving itself.
That's a neat perspective. I haven't thought of that. That might be a
Yes.
calming, like whenever I'm making pieces to sell, that might be a calming thought if I'm being too self-critical. It's like, well, the bark is doing a lot of the work on its own, so maybe I'll be able to settle down. I like that.
You know, a lot of people will use what's called barn board for making rustic looking picture frames and things like that. And I was just thinking, well, as according to what she said, but maybe making like relief carvings in barn board. Yeah, it would have that rustic look too. That might be something that would work.
You'd have to do that with power though, because that stuff's not easy to carve.
There you go. The power carving, the endless debate in my mind. Should I start power carving? It seems like fun.
I don't
like
like
fun.
it, but my husband does.
Like it seems like fun to do, but I mean, I don't
Not
know. It
fun.
seems
I don't think it's fun.
no.
One thing you got to really be careful of with power carving or sanding is years ago, I started carving in 1984, and then in that magazine Chip Chats,
Mhm.
there was a guy, he was in his 30s and he had a wife and a couple of kids, and he carved these beautifully abstracted bird carvings out of spalded olive wood. Now, the spalding is the equivalent of like black mold, in your house.
Mm.
And he didn't know this. And what happened
Yeah.
was from the grinding and the sanding, that spalding mold got into his lungs and he died from it.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yep.
That's
And some
terrifying.
woods, like if you're carving something like a rosewood or some other, so especially some woods like from Florida, they got woods down there that are poisonous and cause rashes, and do the same thing inside your lungs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely good to do your research. Not all wood is created equal for carving. And yeah, it's good to be informed. No doubt about it.
Can you hear me? This is Elmer. Have you ever cut out the back of your carving and then drilled a hole where you're putting your little eyelids in there now, and up around the nose nostril holes, and around the mouth?
Oh, interesting. So it's like the
there.
guy can actually like really breathe. He's got true nostrils. I have not done that before.
Yeah, but then you put a light behind them. You put a little light behind,
Oh, cool.
and so
That's awesome.
the light will shine through those holes.
That's a great idea. I might
You
have
could
to try that one time.
Those eyes, they sell eyes of all sizes, glass eyes, like the bird carvers use. You could do something like
Right.
that with eyes in that.
True that. Cool.
Lucas, you can hear me?
I sure can.
All right, buddy. I'm just looking on your site. I
Yeah.
noticed your beard and your the hat, the red and the brown and the eyes. Is it multicolor, or I'm trying to figure out what kind of wash color you're doing?
Yeah. So painting is something I won't be able to show you, but I can talk to you about it. I can tell you that I use acrylic paints, and this is the secret. It's using really heavily watered down acrylic paints. It's funny when you're just applying the paint onto the bark, it doesn't quite look right. It almost looks like it's hardly even there. So it's really, really heavily watered down acrylic paints that I use. So I like to be able to see the wood grain through the paint, right? Like I find a lot of people who have experience wood carving will hear that I paint my bark and it's like, oh man, what are you doing? It's so beautiful on its own, which is true. But yeah, what you don't want to do is something that I think a lot of people do. And that's just like use the pure paint itself so that you can't see it. But I really water it down so you can see the wood grain through. And then while we're talking about finishing, I'll pull this secret weapon out for you, the Minwax Paste Wax. That's what I use to finish afterwards. And when you have the combination of that watered down acrylic paint and this paste wax, which it's a buff on thing, actually. Speaking of various toothbrushes, this is my applicator right here. Big fan of the toothbrush over here. I'll just mix this stuff around and then apply it with the toothbrush, wait about 10 minutes, and then buff it with some sort of an old linen cloth or something that won't leave you a bunch of pilly white cotton pieces. And yeah, so that's the combination of the watered down acrylic paint and the Minwax Paste Wax is what I do for finishing. And that's it really brings out the color of the watered down paint when you put the wax over top of it. So yeah, that's what I do.
Did you know that Minwax also makes a paste wax that's called dark? And it's
Called what?
Dark. It's like, let me show you. I got a can of it. I bought it by accident. And what it is, it's like it's got a stain already mixed into the wax. And it's like canuba wax or whatever, but it's really good for, it makes it look like it's antique. You see.
Cool.
Can you see it?
No.
It's not showing up on my
I
camera.
unfortunately can't see you.
There it is.
Oh, hey. Nicely done. There you
Minwax
go.
Special Dark.
Special dark.
Yeah.
Cool.
And what it does is I apply it to look smaller carvings. I'll take like a pipe cleaner and bend it over double and rub it on. And then I use a hair dryer to kind of melt it in, and it'll go flow into those hard to reach places. And it gives an antique look. But one thing it'll do is like if you got a bright colored paint, it will take the paint and it'll change the color. Let me show you an example real quick. I'm not trying to steal your show here, but.
Hey man, I love it. I love the community vibe that I'm getting with this Zoom call right now. I was a little uncomfortable with the idea of it being the Lucas show, so it's perfect.
Do you see the green that's on the round part of the base? That's the same green that was used on his face. And so what it is I put that brown Minwax on his face, and you see how it changed the color of it and made him look even creepier. Okay.
Yeah.
But it works good as an antiquing, but if you're going to do a clown or something like this guy here, you don't want to put a real dark thing on it, because it'll make the colors go muted. And that's all I gotta say about that.
There you go. All kinds of great Minwax products there.
So Lucas, when you put your wax on, you rub it
Awesome.
on, you let
Thank
it
you for
dry
that.
for a while, and then buff it out, or what?
You don't have to that's right. You don't have to let it dry for very long at all. It's about 10 minutes. And it doesn't really dry. It's kind of a waxy kind of a coat. So I don't know about dry, I don't know. But yeah, 10 minutes after you apply it on, then you go and buff it with a cloth, and it'll luster up quite nicely.
Now, is that something you do? Is that something you should continually do to preserve your wood carving so it stays nice and polished looking over the years? Because that's going to soak in.
Oh, yeah, it's true. It does somewhat of a job of preserving, but you know, I whenever people ask me if it's safe to put my carvings outdoors, I always say it's probably not the best choice unless you want it to look, you know, aged and weathered over time, because the wax provides some protection, but definitely not perfect protection. So I can't say that I have done more coats over the years, reapplying. So I can't give you a confident answer on that, but my thought is that it wouldn't hurt to try that. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, Lucas, the areas that you put Gorilla Glue on, does it show up differently when you finish it as compared to all the other spots, or does it look the same?
It's a great question. I wish I had this carving here still, but I don't have it in the house anymore. I don't know if anybody has seen my stuff before here or not, but I did this carving of a voyageur, like a French Canadian trapper guy with a red toque. And he had this nose that, well, I mean, it wasn't quite like this guy. He's got something else going on, but his nose popped right off while I was carving him, which happens a sad amount of times. It happens all the time. And so Gorilla Glue it back on, and then I will, after it sets, I'll carve around it and sand around it to try to minimize the area of glue that's showing. But on that one carving that I was talking about, you can kind of see a dark ring around the nose. And that would be just the little edge of glue that might have been exposed. So it does to give you a short answer to that question. It does change the color of it a little bit, but I try to minimize that effect by carving off as much material as I can that's got the glue showing. And usually it doesn't look too bad.
And then another question in the chat, do you put the Minwax on the bark areas as well, or just the face?
I have done both before. Typically speaking, I will only put it on the face. I think the bark looks pretty awesome as it is. And putting the Minwax on the bark it darkens the color of it a little bit, kind of like the raw, natural look of the bark a lot of the time. But yeah, so you can experiment with both for sure. Okay, I'm gonna I'm starting to get a little out of order for how I usually do these carvings now, but I'm gonna start doing some hair because I figured I should at least talk about how I do detailing in the hair. So you can see I've done these large fissures that define sort of the flow in the strands of the hair. And I'll very often like to carve the hair so it has a layered effect, right? So you might have seen me, and you can go back if you want to watch this on YouTube afterwards. You can go back and see how I was carving out this area in here to give it some dimensionality and depth. So it looks like this strand is kind of emerging from underneath the strand. I can't say that this is my most proud example of that effect that I've done, but yeah, it should be good enough for you to get the idea. And then after that, I'll go in with the smaller V tool and start to detail. And the idea is that I want to follow the approximate flow pattern that I have defined, the larger strands of hair. So I'm kind of visualizing, okay, this strand is kind of moving up. It's got a bit of a bend kind of in that way and then goes up. So I'll just do a bunch of little lines with this little V tool that, you know, on average, you could say they follow the same pattern of flow.
Lucas, when you put the
I don't know how we're doing for time. Yes, go ahead.
When you put the eyeball in with your stylus, do you have any fear of blowing out other wood when you dent it in, or is it pretty forgiving that you just
Great question.
Push it right in?
Sounds like Doug to me. I'm honored to get a question from Doug Linker. I can't see you, but that's an unmistakable voice. It's a good question. Yeah, I do. And sometimes I'll just kind of evaluate the integrity of the wood near the eye and make sure that it's a solid feeling piece. So I don't always use this tool. Sometimes I'll just use a piece of sandpaper if I think that I might, you know, mash and kind of bruise the material too much. So yeah, that's a good question. I don't always use that same tool.
Yeah, I'm just afraid I just go all rammy and blow out half the eyeball or something.
Yeah, exactly. So, and like I mentioned earlier, this piece is actually relatively hard compared to most of the bark that I've carved in my time. So I figured I could use the old, whatever the heck this thing is. I don't know. You said stylus. I like that word.
Very good. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, let's see if we can get a little bit of a better visual for what I'm doing with the details here in the beard. And this can get pretty tedious, so I won't make you watch me carve a bunch of hair details and beard over and over again. But you can see how it's just approaching the lip area. And you don't want to be digging in too deeply around the lip.
Have you ever tried using a wood burner on for hair?
I have not done a wood burner for hair. I know that's another real common style of carving. There's a guy in Winnipeg, Murray Watson, who does great cottonwood bark wood spirits as well. And it looks to me anyways like he does wood burning for a lot of the details in the eyes too. And he gets a really cool, you know, a bit of a darker effect going on. So that is another strategy for sure for people who maybe don't want to spend all of the time doing this technique with the little tiny details with the V tool. You fire up the burner. Yeah.
Hey, Lucas, another question from the chat. Do you have to worry about mold or fungus like you would on diamond willow?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I've never had an experience with mold or anything like that growing on the bark. I don't know the technical scientific reason for why I've never experienced that, but in my experience, I haven't had to deal with that before. The thing with cottonwood bark is you got, well, as with all kinds of wood, I guess, you get all kinds of little beetles and critters that'll be, you know, burrowing their homes into your piece that you want to carve a nice face in, and that's always an issue that you got to look out for. But yeah.
If I can just add a comment about Murray Watson.
Yeah,
who's a Winnipeg carver.
Yeah.
Murray does some interesting stuff and incorporates barbed wire into.
Yeah.
And I think it's just
Exactly.
really cool. And I like the idea
Great.
of mixed mediums. I've started using a little bit of copper on some of my things.
Oh,
Again,
cool.
I do gnome homes, but I got a thing for copper. So I've started making bars on windows with copper and stuff. So the mixed medium, I think, is kind of a nice variation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Stuff. So
For sure, yeah.
It was the Murray thing with the barbed wire, I think, is really cool. So
yeah, it's great. He's got that owl, I think, for sale right now. That's he did a whole frame like from old barn wood.
Yeah.
I think he built a frame out of it, and he's got the barbed
cool.
wire kind of curled up, and the owl is perched on the barbed wire. It looks great. Yeah. Okay. Now, does anybody else? Maybe I should ask a specific question if anybody has any questions about how I do any particular aspect of carving, because I'm at a stage here now where I'm like, what could I do? I could do the eyebrows next. Maybe I could clean up the nose, which is still pretty crude looking. Yeah, any kind of detailing. Maybe I'll do the eyebrows. The eyebrows are kind of an interesting thing because they are a little bit different than the regular flow patterns for hair that I do. It's like, I often see people carve eyebrows that might have just kind of straight diagonal dash lines like that, which gets part of the way there, in my opinion, but not quite all the way. And you also see sometimes people carving kind of flowing hair that's going, I guess, horizontally across the brow, which to my eye anyways doesn't quite look right either. And where I'm at with eyebrows right now is this sort of a wispy shape. So it starts moving horizontally almost, but then kind of wisps up in that direction. So I'll kind of connect a bunch of these types of lines for the eyebrows. And you can kind of just get the approximate thing going there. Where's my V tool? Here's my V tool. And this might be disorienting to look at it upside down here, but I'll follow my line. Just trust my line that I drew there. And sideways and then up. Sideways and then up. That kind of shape. I don't know if that is visible or not. That's the idea anyways. And I'll usually go in and add a bit more detail than that. Okay.
So Lucas, can you talk a little bit about your offerings on your website as far as your classes and things go?
Yeah, man, absolutely. I just set this up this morning. I have some lessons available now. We're all connecting on Zoom here, so I have them available on Zoom. There are a couple different packages. There's one 1 hour lesson, approximately 1 hour. I'm not going to cut you off hard at an hour, of course. And then there is a 3 hour lesson package as well. And you can sort of divide those 3 hours up however you would like to, whether it's a single 3 hour session or a 3 different hour-long sessions. We could do it that way as well, whatever works for your schedule. And I've also set up this service where I'll try to send you some cottonwood bark if I can. I know we already mentioned that there might be some shipping related complications, but that'll be on me. That won't be anything that you have to worry about. So that's a problem that I can kind of solve as I come to it. Maybe we'll try it. Certainly if you're in Canada, I think we will be, we shouldn't have anything to worry about with that. So because I know that it's a precious resource and I'm sitting on a gold mine of it here in Winnipeg. And it's such an awesome wood to carve with that I want to get you guys carving in this stuff. So yeah, that's the third option on my website right now. You can get 3 hours worth of lessons and some bark. I'll send you 3 pieces and maybe I'll throw in some little guys like this. Like this is a pretty small little thin piece. I can toss them in. That way you can kind of practice and not feel so precious about your 3 pieces. You know, I know that Tom was telling me earlier that he's got some bark and was nervous to cut into it because it's one of 2 pieces that he had. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And also I have a pre-recorded lesson that is on its way. It's not there on the website quite yet, but it will be coming soon.
And I will put all of your links in our description. So your Facebook, your Instagram, and your
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Tom. That's awesome. Yes. Any more questions? I'll often do a little bit of a sideburn hair patterns up here as well.
Lucas.
Yes, sir.
What is your email or your website? Lucas, I didn't get all of it.
Yeah, no problem. I'll tell you again here. And then I think if you go on the YouTube link that will be posted at some point afterwards, it will be in the links there. So, but I'll tell you right now, it's just my first and last name, Lucas Kost, that's KOST, .com. That's the website. And you can actually contact me directly through the website. It'll send me an email. So, and my email is lucasacost@gmail.com.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
I appreciate you asking.
Lucas, are you gonna glue that nose on this one?
That's a good question. Like, that was my dilemma. It's been going through my mind a lot. It's like I've got a pretty goofy piece of wood that I dug into here. It's great because sometimes I really like, unexpected cracks like that coming sideways through the nose. After you put the wax on it, it'll look really cool. But will I glue it? Probably. Let's see if we can see here. Yeah, it's a little wiggly, kind of unstable. So this is a situation where I have some super glue or some Gorilla Glue that you can just kind of squeeze in there and soak, and it'll harden it up and preserve the integrity of the wood right there.
I saw this stuff that it's an epoxy, and you make it in different colors.
Okay, yeah.
And I saw somebody doing this modern art type carving, and they would put that epoxy, the colored epoxy, in places like that, and it looked really neat. In fact, the Japanese used to carve these really precious, really thin jade bowls and things like this, and when they broke, they would patch them with gold, and it really looked better than the thing did before it was broken. And that might be an idea. Stick into that.
That's a cool idea. I love the idea of creating something that's even more beautiful and more valuable from what at first comes across as not desirable, as an accident or something. Awesome.
Lucas, what size cottonwood bark do you usually find up there?
Good question. I was anticipating that one, so I got some examples for you here. So due to, I think, just reasons of climate, it is, I believe, the plains cottonwood bark, which I think, if I have it right, is generally the larger bark. So it's that species of tree, but because of the climate, they, on average, won't be as big as they might be in a warmer climate. So we got a lot of these little guys. But then you just have to look longer and harder, and you can get, pieces that are in and around 4.5 inches thick. And this one's pretty solid. So we got big guys like that. And then, some really long, goofy pieces that I won't even really, let's see if I can zoom out a little bit. See my coffee and my mess there. These big, funky looking guys. This is probably a 3.5 feet long piece in total, pretty deep. And this is kind of cool. I have no idea what the heck I'm going to do with this. Maybe I see a tree.
What would something like that be worth?
What would something like this be worth? Oh man, I can't even say that I've made anything like this before. I have a hard time pricing art, man. It's so hard. It's so weird to do. I don't know.
You might be able to do a fish one with that one, with them running it horizontal.
But yeah, like a big northern pike or something like that.
That or trout's jumping.
Oh, cool. Oh, I see what you're saying. I like that. It's like if I were to turn it around like this, kind of almost see them like jumping out of the water.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah. Cool. I like that idea.
And you could add another piece on with a bear. try
There
and
you go.
catch. I just
See,
seen
yeah,
it.
these nature pieces, these nature landscape pieces are very interesting to me. I would love to try that because I'm trying to broaden my horizons as well. I've done a few
Have
commissions
you
in a
ever seen
row.
those? You ever
Sorry, go
seen
ahead.
those ones that are carved like sort of like houses, but they're like a house on a hill and it's got stairs that come down, and then there'll be
Yes.
another house connected to it, and they carve through, and you
Yes.
see through the windows and stuff.
Yes, I have, and I've tried some of these whimsical houses before, and they're so much fun. I really like that style of carving, and maybe that piece that I just showed you would work for that as well. I haven't done many of them. I've really only ever done one that like I've done some really smaller ones, like, well, this isn't even really the same kind of thing that you're talking about, but this was meant as a Christmas ornament kind of thing, just a little tiny whimsical house with a little hay roof and a chimney in cottonwood bark. But I've done bigger whimsical house, or one rather whimsical house before, and gave it as a housewarming gift to my cousin. So it's hanging up there and I get to see it. And so that's kind of cool. I'd like to try one of those again sometime soon, because I've done so many wood
That
spirits.
Christmas ornament was neat.
Oh.
Now, does a light go inside that?
Yeah, so the idea,
Is
my thinking was that it would be hanging on a tree and people have the lights on their tree, and you might be able to see something twinkling in the back just from a Christmas light. You could probably install some kind of a light in there. So somebody I haven't mentioned yet, which is a shame that I haven't mentioned this guy yet. I don't think, or maybe I did at the beginning. I can't remember. We'll have to go to the tape for this one. Marcel Desolets, Winnipeg carver, who taught me when I was a younger man. He does great stuff. He has his own carving page now, Marcel Desolets Wood Carving, I believe is what it is. And he does whimsical houses. And what I've seen him do lately is he'll put a piece of, I don't know if the tape itself is colored, but it's like a little piece of Scotch tape that he'll turn around and put in the window and just sort of, like, I don't know, maybe, yeah, something like that. It's like a yellow tinted kind of a thing. And he'll place it, sitting near a window, and then the natural light will hit it. And it's got this yellow glow. So it actually looks like there's, a warm temperatured room colored light on in the house, and it looks great. It's a really good result. So
here's one I wanted to show you that if you see Wally up there, it's a long piece.
I can't see your screen. I don't know if maybe maybe Blake is in control of this.
Anyway,
here we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Matt Palomeo made this, and I got it in a raffle, but he carves the back and puts a piece of wood in there, and it hangs on a dowel.
Oh,
so that's
cool.
how you display it. And I thought that was pretty neat.
That's inventive right there. That's really cool. Yeah, I love seeing original concepts like that. That's great.
And Lucas, we're at an hour and a half.
Yeah, that seems to be about the time. As you guys can probably tell, I've kind of given up on the idea of finishing this guy a little while ago. So I'm over it. So yeah, I hope that we're not keeping people too long.
No, I just wanted to open it up for any other questions we may have from anybody in the group.
Absolutely.
Lucas, I want to thank you for your demonstration. It's been wonderful, and you're a nice fellow and fun to talk to. I got to run, and it's nice being here with everybody today.
That's great.
Y'all have a good day, okay?
Yeah, you as well. I wish I could see you, but I can't. Have a good one. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Well, I'm the best looking one here, so
Great. Okay. Nice. Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed this little kind of community free-for-all group chat that this has evolved into. That was sort of the best case scenario in my mind heading into this. So that's great. Thanks for all your participation and questions and stories and all that stuff. It's great.
Hey, Lucas.
Yes.
Are you going to do a small video about your painting on your website, or because that seems to be that's the weak spot of all the carvers is the painting, or we're insecure, we're like, don't know how much or too little, too much.
Of course, it is a nerve-wracking thing after you've done a carving that you're proud of. I always love the way that they look naturally too. And there's a piece of me all the time that's like, I really kind of don't know if I want to put some paint on this, but I usually do. And I'm usually glad that I did in the end. So yeah, I will definitely be putting something up that is some instructional content on painting and finishing in the future. So you can stay posted for that for sure.
All right, Lucas, I'm going to go ahead and stop you there.
Yeah, man.
I want to say thank you for coming on and sharing with us and doing your demonstration. And hopefully everybody got some good tips out of it. So thank you so much for everything that you've done here.
I hope this was an enjoyable, valuable experience in some way, shape, or form for you all. And yeah, I want to say thanks for tuning in. It's been really fun. Didn't quite make my goal of finishing the carving, but that's okay. I'm over it. So,
yeah, appreciate it. It's great.
Okay. All right.
Let me take a little bit of time. I'll go through what we have coming up in the coming weeks.
All right.
Next week, I will be on site with Dwayne Gosnell on February 27th. Dwayne's going to do a demonstration on study sticks. The week after that, we'll have Rich Emling on. He's going to be doing a demonstration on marionettes. On March the 13th, we have Mary May of Mary May's School of Traditional Wood Carving that's going to come on. She's going to do a demonstration for us. Janet Cordell's coming on the 20th of March. She's going to do a demonstration. James Ray Miller will be back on March the 27th to do a demonstration. On April the 3rd, we have Tim Crawford that's going to be coming on. Tim is the president of the National Woodcarvers Association and is heading up Chip Chats now. So he's going to come on and talk to us a little bit about the future plans for Chip Chats and what they're going to do with the magazine. And then after that, we have Alec Lacoste that's coming up. He's going to be coming on our 1-year anniversary show to do a demonstration for us. And then Bruce and Kenny's going to be coming on, and he's also going to be talking about his caricature carvings. So look forward to those meetings coming up in the coming weeks. Again, we meet every week at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on Zoom, same Zoom channel. So feel free to contact us or come back and view the videos. If you don't get a chance to watch the video live, go to YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe there. And again, all the links from today's meeting will be on the video once we post it this afternoon. So just want to say thank you all for coming on again today. We'll see you all next week where we have Dwayne Gosnell coming on to do study sticks, and we'll see you then. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.